All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and recap 208 and 209, just kind of conjoined together since I didn't really trade that much in the final 2 days of the week. But yeah, this was pretty simple. I ended up swinging AMD puts overnight on the 7th, and then they ended up opening up green, but then had a spike, and then we added into them, or at least I did. If you didn't add it to them, it's okay. They still won about 30%, but kind of the whole idea behind it, right? We were looking for a lower high after this apparent high here. And obviously, we sold down and we bounced off of this level at 164.46. I've already talked about this quite a bit, pretty extensively. We were looking for a bounce off this. That was on weak volume, as you guys can see here. Very low volume on this bounce up. So we were expecting a lower high to be somewhere shy of this high here, right? We ended up having that. This is where we flipped bearish on the chart overall. And then obviously, we were looking for what would have been an ideal low break here, or a break of structure under 164.46. Personally, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting one more bounce off of this and then another lower high, right? Something that failed to break above this high. And that's kind of the reasoning for my shorts this week. I've been playing this pretty consistently short since this spot here. But if we actually jump into the chart now, right, this was the day where we ended up having, or I think it was over here. Yeah. So we had a high, right? And we ended up bouncing down. We had a higher low based off of this low here, and we started to push up again on very, very low volume, and we were failing to push back above this high here at 172.97. So this is right around where I ended up taking the swing down, right? So I ended up getting in, if we can grab a level here, 170, 173. Towards the end of the day, I think we were like up 20% or something like that. Obviously, I didn't want to cut. Target for me the whole time was down here. I think it was like 166. Actually, there was a dark pool print, so it was a little bit higher. I think it was like 167 something. Yeah, like 167.23 if I'm looking at TradingView on the side screen right now, but somewhere around here, right? We were looking for a break underneath this low, but I added a swing here overnight to go short on 167.5 puts. We went up like 20% or so into the close, and then obviously we had a nice gap down in pre-market overnight. We ended up opening here, right? We ended up pushing up and getting our high first. I actually ended up adding to this spot, going into our entry and kind of like the closing range, if you will. And then we had a very, very nice pull all the way back down to that higher low, pushed up and then closed, right? So open, high, low, close, right? That was our 15-minute candle. This ended up being like a 40 or 45% win, and I made about $985 on this, right? So very, very nice trade overall. Of course, the market got pretty crazy after that. We can see that the following 15-minute candle ended up pushing right back up to that same exact spot. Next 15-minute candle sold all the way right back into the opening range. It was just an overall crazy, crazy day. And then I'm pretty sure I took a lotto on this one as well. So let's take a quick review on that. So next trade was actually the same exact contract, just a little bit later in the day. As you guys can see, I ended up taking AMD 167.5 puts at 0.64. Once these contracts got a little bit more discounted after our trims, right, we still saw a very, very nice intraday lower high, right? We're still kind of playing off that theme of weakness and the broader lower highs, right, that this AMD had been putting in over time, and just playing off the relative weakness, right? Market had caught a bid, right, and then the market started to kind of hold, and then AMD obviously came into the 618 on low volume, which I'll show you guys in a second. But I took the 167.5 right at 0.64. I was targeting 167.23, that same spot. This was a measured 3.5 R. I was risking the high, right? I only used 5 cons for this as well, and then I'm not gonna lie, I ended up taking a little bit of a nap. I wasn't feeling good on the 7th. I still don't feel the best, but this is the chart I have here as well. Pretty much, right? Very, very calculated risk. One moment. Sorry, guys. I told you guys I don't feel good. But yeah, pretty much the entire chart there. We were looking for this to fail back down to the lows there. And yeah, I was just kind of holding it all day. You guys can see, right? We ended up having a really nice move. We ended up getting these from, what was the entry? 64 to like, I think they went all the way to like 125 or something crazy like that. Now, I'll actually show you guys the chart here in just a second. Right, you guys can see pretty much the same exact setup here, right? We had the initial trade within this first 15-minute bar. Obviously, it ended up pushing out on the second bar, and then I just waited, right? We ended up pushing down, caught a little higher low off of this previous day higher low, right? This whole range held really nicely. So this was kind of one of my targets to start with. And then ideally we got to move down into this spot here, right? And then a little bit below. But this is essentially what we had. If we take our high and kind of pull it from the most recent low, we can have our swing levels, if you will. So we have Fibonacci retracements. We start from our high, we go to our low. And we can take a quick glance here and realize that none of these candles had closed over the 618, right? So this is kind of the premise of where I was like, okay, I understand that contracts are discounted and we can't obviously break above the midpoint of this chart. We're failing the highs here, so I ended up taking my trade right around in this range here. I risked a break over 172.17. This is my stop loss up here, and I was looking for my trims. One right down here, right? This was at like a 1.5 to 2R, and ideally runners down for anything below. Now we ended up getting an initial, 15-minute candle that looked like it was going to break out towards the highs. Like I said, I was pretty relaxed on this position. I only had 5 contracts, so I was okay letting this candle close, and of course it just ended up being a wick. And the volume on this was very, very weak as well, right? So it wasn't really significant of a breakout. Obviously the candle, you would have liked to have seen more volume initially, but there was no reason for me to leave this trade, of course. So I stayed in this. We kept seeing, pretty much a consolidation here. And really formed out a very, very solid resistance at 171. You guys can see rejection, 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 right? This is, this is a pretty clear sign of a resistance if I've ever seen one. Of course, the longer you sit here, this could be absorbed and we could break out to the highs if there are buyers that are willing to push this through. But we ended up kind of failing. We ended up pushing down, kind of caught another, this higher low range. We ended up pushing out. I would still call this a lower high, right? We're on a 15-minute chart. I mean, it's obviously is a clear pivot here as well. And then we ended up getting a really nice sell-off, okay? This sell-off, I obviously like to trim into strength. I always recommend trimming into strength, especially once you start to near your targets. We were looking for low of day, right, to get that 1.5 2R, and this broke down really nicely, right? I say 1.5 2R, but if you really go look at the options chart, this ended up being almost a 70-80% win. So, from an equity position, yeah, it doesn't look as lucrative, but from an options perspective, very, very lucrative trade. I always recommend looking at your R multiples via your options chart. Sometimes it won't show because price hasn't been there. We don't know what the contracts are going to be priced at. So it's a little bit iffy, but I kind of had an idea that this would be a really nice trade. But just held this through, right? We ended up pushing down to the low of day here and got a really nice break under. Obviously, this ended up being indicative of a potential bounce, right? At low of day, you guys can see the candle had a very, very high volume. Clear wick below and close above, almost tweezer bottoms, and then we pushed out and gave us another lower high. And yeah, this was a sick trade. This was about 80%. This was my second alert of the day, and this was literally all I took. This is all I took, and I ended up closing out, everything on 2.8. Let's jump into 2.9 now. This is Friday. What do you guys think I traded? Right, I ended up trading the same exact thing, AMD one more time. I was a little patient though. I saw a lot of people on Twitter. I try to keep off Twitter during the day. I try to stay off my phone in general, but I saw so many people hitting like weird plays. Right, a lot of people seemed like they hit everything that was going on. And sometimes that can be disruptive to your flow and your process, whatever chart you're stocking. You feel like you have to jump in, you feel like you're going to chase, or you start looking for flow to try to capture the same moves, especially on a Friday. There's always that temptation like, oh my God, if I just find the right thing, I can make, 200%, 300%. You got to get that out of your mind. But I'll show you guys what I ended up taking here on Friday because I literally traded the same exact chart. Alright guys, Friday, I wasn't even really planning to trade, so I was actually just looking at Netflix. I try to keep things really tight on a Friday just because it's very, very easy to lose and let emotions take control on a Friday when you think you see something, and it ends up just kind of ruining your entire week. It's never a good thing, so I try to play it safe, and of course Netflix didn't really give me the move I was looking for in pre-market, so I just stopped looking at it. I went right back to AMD because I did notice a sell-off in the morning. And I was looking for continued weakness, right? Now, you guys can see here, I ended up taking what I deem to be a pretty risky trade. I usually don't trade premiums this cheap. I try to go like 2 strikes out of the money or at the money if I can. But I took the same exact one, the 167, oh, I mistyped that actually, 167.5 put at 0.17, and I risked the high a day. right? It was the bottom of the options contract at 0.17. And on top of that, right, it was a point of confluence where we had almost the same exact setup as the previous day, and I'll show you guys here in a second. But I did get, trim off at 0.23, and then I put my stops to break even, and I did get stopped at break even. I kind of recognized that this was a potential flag, so I just wanted to have stops in place. But let's show you guys the chart really quickly, and right after this, you guys will see. I was partially joking, partially not. I've just been kind of frustrated with the fact that it just seems like you can be not good at trading, if I'm being honest, and just buy calls on anything, right, and make money. And it's pretty insane, and not even having to think about risk reward, having to think about where the chart is at in context of its weekly highs, et cetera, even all-time highs, right? It just feels like if you just buy calls on anything that pulls back with any significance, and I guess there hasn't been a significant pullback with anything that's a red candle. If you just buy calls off of it, it feels like you can print, which is, it sounds easy, but it's not that easy, especially as you get better and you kind of recognize how risky it is, and the risk reward, it's so skewed. But yeah, this was partially satire, partially not. I did put a decent chunk of money into this one, but we'll talk about that in a second. But let's take a look at the chart here, right? Kind of the same exact concept as I told you guys before, right? We're going to go to a 5-minute this time, but we kind of recognize that the low here was 168.95. This was the initial higher low from, what day was this? This was 2/7, right? So 2/7 here. Remember we had the kind of the initial low, push out, higher low, and this higher low held for quite some time, right? We ended up having our trade here, right? And we had a nice bounce off of this spot. And then, of course, into Friday, we had a sell-off, bounce off that spot one more time. But remember the previous day, I ended up taking a short, or what day was it? It was this day over here, where I ended up taking the 618 short, and I almost did the same exact thing, right? So on this day, remember I got a 0.17 fill. I ended up taking the same exact concept. I went from high to low, right? Oh, that doesn't line up perfectly. 1 second, guys. Boom. And this one ended up pushing up slightly above the 618, but still kind of the same thing I was looking for in the previous day. This was a high, or I'm sorry, a lower high with very, very low volume. It was looking like it was going to fail and push towards the initial high. And I ended up going short off of the second red candle and kind of just risked the high here. That's why I said it was super risky. It was the bottom of the options contract, so I didn't really know where to place my stop loss on an options perspective. I was really just risking the chart. And of course, I had a pretty nice move right off the bat, and you guys can see. And it doesn't look like much, but on 0DTE, guys, these moved pretty well. They went from 17, I think, to a high of like 2.5. I got trims on half at 2.3, and I did recognize right away the fact that it didn't push down on high volume, right? You guys can tell here it was pretty low volume. It stayed within the confines of the previous candle as well, which is typically not the best sign. I was just like, okay, this could be a flag. I'm just going to put my stops at break even and play it a little bit safe here. And then from there, right, we had this crazy breakout candle. Oh, actually, the next candle wasn't that crazy. I think it just kind of pushed these sellers out, and then the next candle through the high was crazy. But I ended up getting stopped out right around break even, or at break even, at this level here. You never know, there could be some slippage. I didn't go back and check my fills, but right, we ended up getting pushed through. Secondary candle, massive push out. Right, and then we had a third candle that ended up pushing us out even harder, and then we found our top here. Now, I want to talk about one thing, right? Why did I go short again? Because I did go short somewhere in this range, but right, I'll tell you guys why I took the long side trade. If you guys remember, I was just like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna take calls. Not my proudest moment, but the high volume breakout right here, right as we broke through high a day. Typically, guys, I don't ever condone this, but as this kind of pushes out like this, you'd want to wait for a retest like that, and then you try to take the move up and whatever you can get, right? Something like that, and then maybe it pops out again. I just took calls because that feels like that's what the market's been doing. Like I said, it's been giving easy money to smooth brains, as you guys saw in the chat. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna put some money into this. I put about $1,500 in into a breakout candle. I didn't even let it close, and you guys can see we had a push out here, right? Obviously on this 5-minute bar, and the secondary bar pushed out even further. I played it safe because I don't trade like this ever. I'm very, safe with my trades. So as you guys can see, I got a fill at like 1.10 on the 172.5s. Just ignore my words here. I knew it was a bad trade though. Like in the sense, like okay, it was a good read on the sense of volume and the candles and the strength of those candles, but just risk reward and getting pullbacks. That's what you want, guys. So I'm not proud of this, but I ended up closing full at 1.5. They ended up going to like 2.9, 3.0. So maybe I should have held a little bit longer. It is what it is. But I marked out pretty much everything as it was occurring in real time, as you guys can see here, right? I kind of noted the volume on the breakout through the orb high. Just let everybody know, like, hey, hopefully everyone got in 1.10 to 2.9, literally less than 5. I think it was less than 5.5 minutes. But yeah, just try to be patient from there. Then let's take a look at the chart one more time because I did take a lotto short. I don't really put lottos into my channel very often just because I think it's kind of a, what's the word? An easy way to get out of a bad trade if it doesn't go your right, the right way. But I did take another trade here. I took AMD. What do you guys think? 167.5 puts. I jumped in. Oh no, actually, I didn't take the 167.5. I took the 170 puts because I think the 167.5s were only 3 cents. There's no way I was going to do that, but I was kind of thinking about it. But I ended up taking the 170s at 18 cents, and kind of the same exact story, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at that one on the chart. Let me clean this up. So last trade here, guys. This was the lotto I took at the end of the day, and same situation, guys. Okay. Remember, we want to look for structure. We want to look for the tell or the signs, footprints, if you will. We had this big breakout that pushed all the way up to 175. Right? Remember what 175 was? It was this little support over here. Like in this little bottom range. Like right around, it's not letting me snap onto it. There we go. Like right around there, right? Hourly support, hourly support, hourly support. Pretty close on this spot, hourly support. Resistance at this point, and this is when we were started to swing short and kind of look short. This was Monday, I believe. Or no, Tuesday, right? And we obviously pushed up, retested that again, and we failed. But if we go to the 5-minute, right, we can take a look and actually see what candle printed on that. Right, we had a very high volume breakout, which is okay. We end up hitting that. We start to print, right, and this candle here, you guys should be able to tell, a gravestone doji, shooting star, whatever you want to call it, equally matched the sell or the buy pressure from this candle here. Okay, so nasty rejection there. It sells off, which is a good sign. We want to see, though, if they can catch a higher low. I was expecting it maybe to come off this like orb high, right around there. But, right, we end up catching it a little bit earlier. I assume this is the EMAs. It pops out, and what do we get? Lower high. I probably should have taken it there, but I was a little bit scared of AMD at that point, right? Especially considering how strong this breakout was. So I was waiting for another lower high. Now, one thing I want you guys to notice, right, is where support was on this and where a structure shift would come, right? This is technically your higher low, lower high. We'd want to get a structure break underneath this higher low here. So what I was actually looking for was a retest of this spot here. One more lower high, okay? That's the reason for the trade. It ended up breaking under, made a new low, and then we ended up pushing up again. What is this? Lower high, right? And I ended up risking kind of this level here. This is obviously the spot. I think I have the ability to jump into the Discord real quick to show you guys. Let's see. Nah, it always does that. I don't know why. I have to like restart my thing. But if you guys go back to the lotto section, this is exactly where I took it. Jumped in right here, right? And remember, we always want to pull our fibs on these two just to be safe and kind of know where this should bounce. So we take low to high, right? And look, it's no wonder where this bounced from. But look at the hammer where it came off of, right? Pretty low volume, right? And then the push up, you guys can see, is divergent, meaning pressure. You guys can see right here, hopefully. Yeah, you guys can. So, excuse me. Decreasing volume on the way up to retest this spot, right? Looks like it's just a weak bid that is going to print another lower high. So I ended up shorting this. I kind of risked a break back above this spot. And we got a nice move here. We got same exact trade as the first one, right? 17 to like 23 to 25, and then I think it went a little bit further. I went to 34, and I ended up taking off everything right around here, like 34 cents, 32 cents in that range. So really clean trade. It was about 70 to 80%. Very, very simple. And like I said, on Fridays, you don't need much. This doesn't look like much of a move, right? If we end up just taking this from the high here to the low, what was that? About $1.21, but that's all you need. And yeah, they ended up doing really well. Ideally, this had flushed even further and kind of come down to this this big breakout spot down here, but it's all good. Of course, this ended up bouncing. But I was out of the trade at that point. But that was really it, guys. It was really just kind of attacking the same name over and over and over once we spotted weakness, and just being patient for that weakness, and not being afraid, right? I know there's certain parts of the market that were, bullish, quote unquote. I felt like a lot of those names still, though, were just kind of chasing, and I didn't want to do that. Mara was something that was on my radar on Coin, but I didn't take those because, as you guys know, right, you had to basically swing into this. Or was it? Yeah, like right here. Right, technically this is a retest of a bearish structure, like right around there. But if you guys saw Gavin in the Discord, right, there was the low here, right? We always want to look at our imbalances. It filled this imbalance here, technically, right? So this should have been a longable setup. Bitcoin looked like it was going to break out, but you just never know with Bitcoin, right? And I was wondering, because like, man, like I don't know if I should take this here. You'd have to basically swing, right? I mean, this looks pretty clean now that I look back on it, but I was waiting for a retest of this spot up here, 2039 to actually short. But of course, we ended up getting a gap up in overnight because Bitcoin had that nasty breakout, and it had a really strong candle, right? Just kind of broke through this spot. It was pretty irrelevant at that point. Look how strong that close was. Volume was there as well. And really all I was watching on that day for was this, if we can get it, and then try to trade it back up to the high. Didn't happen, right? Ended up breaking out again. So remains to be seen. If this thing is still bullish, you'd wait for a retest of this spot here, and then you could probably take it back up and toward this buy side liquidity up there at 29.18. I think there's potential for this to get back up to that range, especially considering Coin reports this week. But yeah, that was the only other trade I was really interested in this week. If you guys were around too, Tesla remains to be seen. But all I was really waiting for on Tesla, guys, is buyers to prove themselves. And I've talked about this a lot, right? I mean, we've been printing lower high, lower high, lower low, just consistently. We finally found this bottom here that I perceive to be bottom. You guys can see we have the 618 over here on this left-hand side, which is that blue line. We did kind of open in this range, obviously traded underneath it, and then we had that nasty day here, right? Oh, let me zoom in. Right, this hammer candle, if you will, that swept underneath the low, right, and then tapped into the 618 and got back above on pretty high volume. Some of you guys that traded that, that's pretty crazy. I know some people traded the following day, which was here. I mean, that was crazy too. I mean, props to you. It's risky, especially considering how many times you could have taken it, like right here when it filled this hourly gap. I mean, you could have taken it here, but it was the same story where it failed, right? I'm sure some people took this up here, right, when it broke a structure on 1129 on this day here, right, or even this, and it failed, right? And then it broke out again. What did it do? It failed. So I was just being really safe with this. I just wanted to see them bid, right, with high volume, and then continuously build higher lows. And they did that bar by bar, right? Each daily low was higher than that previous daily low. And I want to see us eventually get above this here, right? This is that old swing low at 194.07, which coincides with this gap fill here as well, right? You guys need me to draw out the gap. It's right there. Let's just go. It's today's date, the 10th. This will pull us out a little bit. There we go. Like that whole range is the gap. So this closed pretty strong right at 194. So I did put some risk on the table over the weekend into 216. So going into next week. But I mean, the volume's not the craziest, right? But we did get out of this zone, right? And we pretty much flagged all day right underneath the resistance, which is a pretty, good sign of strength there. You guys can see we just pretty much flagged. Had the big pop, pulled back higher low, and then we consolidated for about 2 hours, if you will, with very, very tight candles here. And then we started to expand in that last hour. You guys can tell by the volume. So we'll see how this one ends up doing. I'm not getting my hopes too high. Ideally, if we go back to the daily chart, right, we can get something that's like this, where we end up pushing into this spot, right, kind of like that, pull back, hold, and then I'll add again, and then we get a trade up into that. Maybe a little bit higher if you guys remember there's a dark pull print at like 210, I think, and some change. So ideally we get some kind of schematic that looks like this. Push, pull, go, right? Something like that. And if you take a look, guys, at the weekly, super bullish weekly chart. Let me show you guys really quickly. And this is why I just always say just to be patient. Like, you may think you missed stuff on 5 minutes and stuff like that, and you're trying to press to get in because you see other people across the board on Twitter and whatever, man. This like jumping into stuff without confirmation. If you just take your time, you're not going to get shaken out, and you can put more money into your trades and have conviction. So, I mean, look at that candle. Matched the rejection candle, right? Almost matched. It's pretty close to the earnings candle as well. Remember, we can consider this an imbalance, and it technically is. It does have a daily gap, so there's that. And very clean close here. Look how strong that is. Look at the sweep underneath this this low here at 180 into the 618. I assume big buyers jumped in. You can tell by the volume here, right? Especially considering, look at this entire downtrend. Low volume, just matched it. I think we're just going to retrace the imbalances now. So just a quick little update on Tesla. I just wanted to review that because it's, we don't know what it's going to be yet, but I wanted to give you guys the reasons for me being so hesitant on taking it, why I ultimately took it when I did, right? I just was waiting for that weekly candle. And just being smart, right? Just being smart, being patient, letting things come to me. That's been the name of the game, especially if you just want to survive in this market, because it is hard. I know a lot of people think it's easy right now, and I mean, I put a tweet out like this should remind you a lot of 2021, 2022, when people thought investing was easy, and then that huge bear market came and people lost, like, not everything, but people got destroyed because they didn't know how to trade a more difficult market, a more patient market, more calculated market. So yeah, just wanted to go over that really quickly, guys. I'm going to go ahead and conclude it here. Just basically one name I traded all week, if you will, then wanted to review Tesla as well. So all right, guys, take care.